Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 TechTalk. Today's topic is continuous number sequence, performance improvements in Dynamics 365. My name is Alejandra Cabrales, and I will be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams Live events. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the session and in a live segment at the end of the presentation. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Saurabh Kuchhal, Senior Fast Track Solution Architect, Suvarna Raju, Principal Software Engineer Manager, Prabhakar Nagaraj, Senior Software Engineer. Saurabh, over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Andrea. Good morning from Seattle. Today's topic is continuous number sequence, performance improvement. And as we all know, number sequence or auto numbering is a core and common concept exists in all business applications. Today, we will talk about number sequence framework in F&O apps, which provides number sequencing per desired scope and per desired formats. So far, since the beginning of finance and operations, Exapta, AX, these names, right? So we typically didn't recommend to use continuous number sequence due to performance reasons. We have a new feature now, which can almost get rid of that performance challenge. Let's double click into the number sequence framework and more specifically into the continuous number sequence with this session. I also have Suvarna, Raju, and Prabhakar, who has been instrumental in defining, building this solution for us. So this is the agenda. We will discuss the problem. What is the problem today? We'll talk about the business scenario. We will hit into what is the solution design, what is the approach we have taken. We will have a demo as well, how the new feature works. And we will also talk about in the end, what is the current status, what are the timelines, when is it coming, all those things will be here. And yes, please, whatever questions you have, please keep them coming. We have team here who can answer them live during the session, and also we can take some questions in the end as well. So before we go into continuous number sequence and the new feature, let's just recap what is number sequence in F&O. In F&O, we can create number sequence in most of the modules in the parameters page, and there is a typically a tab for number sequence to define. And in that, you can define a new number sequence with a scope. In that scope, you can have shared across companies, or you can have it per legal entity, per operating unit. There are multiple options to define in the scope. And based on the scope, you can also define the segments. In the segments, you can define whatever scope you have chosen. Let's say you have chosen legal entity based number sequence. You can have legal entity also as part of that numbers generated. And you can define constants like hyphen or any other. And in the end, you can typically define the alphanumeric values, which will be hashed. And you can say, okay, you need next numbers, first numbers, all those things also you can define over here. The one area where we will hit into most in this session is continuous flag. This continuous yes and no toggle, this is what drives the particular number sequence will be non-continuous or a continuous number sequence. And that changes how the behavior will be from the number sequence side. So what is continuous flag? So two types of number sequences, continuous number sequence and non-continuous number sequence. One thing to note here for non-F&O folks, at least, right? When we say continuous number sequence in F&O, this is a no gap number sequence. It does not skip any number. It also it says no gap number sequence. That's what we are trying to say. It doesn't mean like numbers may be used sequentially. So there could be case that particular number is recycled for whatever reasons it didn't use, and that it will come back in the later time. So the only thing is in continuous number sequence, what we promise is it will not skip any number. In non-continuous number sequence, of course, it uses memory, it uses cache. Based on that, it may skip the numbers. And but most likely, if you have single-threaded process or interaction or jobs running, numbers will be in the sequence. But the only problem is in the non-continuous, you do lose numbers if whatever reason restarts or crashes or anything happens in those scenarios. And this is the performance tab you must have seen in the number sequence page. This is what pre-allocation, which defines, currently we use it in non-continuous number sequence. then we recommend to use pre-allocation. You turn that flag toggle on, and on the performance quantity of numbers, you define, okay, what should be the numbers we want to pre-allocate, and system selects those numbers and it stores them in memory. And this is what primarily changing in this feature in a nutshell. And we will talk a lot more about this, how we are going to use pre-allocation for continuous number sequence as well. So let's dive into the problem. So first and foremost, typically why we go for continuous number sequence is legal requirements. There are companies, private, semi-private, public, semi-public, government companies who are using D365 finance and operations, and they are in compliance to have no gap number sequence for their vouchers, for their invoices, depending on their scenarios, business process. And many companies, especially in Europe, in APAC, in India regions, we see from our customers all over the globe where they have more requirements to use continuous number sequence. Another big problem we see is performance, right? We do have large enterprises who are relying on D365 apps for their business, and they expect system to perform optimally. And for that optimal performance with continuous number sequence, it does not work that way. There are issues. We will talk about that also, what issues we see, and that it takes a lot of time, consuming a lot of database utilization, and doesn't give the required performance, required throughput. As far as we know, this challenge existed since the beginning of FNO, AX, or Exapta. So from very, very long time, from almost day one, if we had number sequence, a continuous one, we saw the performance challenges at the back end. So we hope we'll solve these all these challenges with this feature. And let's talk also about the system issues, what we saw at our end through telemetry and all those things from the issue side from customers. We saw SQL blocking a lot on the table locks are happening during continuous number sequence. We also saw another one, which is another area we look to improve here, is in case of crashes, in case of restarts, or any unexpected terminations, we saw the pattern sometimes where the numbers were unused, even in continuous number sequence. So we have improved our feature. With this feature, we have improved our logic, basically, I would say, to not have SQL blockings, and also improved our cleanup jobs, which we will talk soon on both areas, where those unused numbers in case of AOS crashes or restarts, we can track even in those scenarios. And this is just one screenshot. Typically, it may recall some memories for you, where you would see the head blocker, the blocking is happening on the SQL side due to the number sequence tables. Let's also talk about the business scenario. So where can we use this particular feature? So we did enhance this feature over the last year. Now it does work for every single business process. So any kind of number sequence you mark it continuous, you can use this new feature. And if you have a regulatory, if you have a business scenario where you do have compliance requirements or performance requirements, where you are looking to gain performance and continuous number sequence, you can use this scenario. You use this feature. Little more where we are seeing the continuous number sequences getting used more. We do see journals our customers are using for journals. Vouchers is definitely a lot more. And also we see invoices, the external facing documents. Then there also we see customers are using continuous number sequences. But yes, this is not the limit. You can use for any business process, as I mentioned. But typically for these transactions, we are seeing a lot more continuous number sequences. Okay, solution design approach. I will give the floor to Prabhakar here to walk us through, go a little more deep into the feature, how it worked, and what approach we took here. Prabhakar, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Saurabh. So we will talk about the performance optimization that we did, and what are the various activities that we did to bring back the unused numbers, which happens typically during the crash scenario when a AOS or a batch AOS crashes. And we will talk about how the pre-allocation can be configured both in the UI as well as how does it work. So we will talk about these three aspects in the solution. Yeah. So when we did the optimization, we had certain design thoughts in our mind. One was to reduce the unnecessary call to the database. What we had noticed is when we were making a call to get number for a continuous number sequence, we saw a room of opportunity to reduce the number of calls that was happening to the database, thereby reducing the resource utilization and the number of concurrent calls to DB. The second one was we noticed that we could effectively use the SQL logs, especially the read pass log and no log, while reading the particular data so that we can perform the operation without blocking, and a row log, take a row log while performing any update operation on a particular record to change the status or delete or reuse the number by changing the state. The third we did try to look up as how can we fasten the number allocation by pre-populating the number sequence list with a set of records. The way we do is, we will talk about more in detail in the next subsequent slides, but the way we do is how we interact with the number sequence table and the number sequence list table, how we populate the particular record, how do we allocate the particular record from the number sequence list. We improve that particular allocation and assignment of the numbers. Thereby, we could reduce the contention on the number sequence table, the log on it, as well as on the number sequence list table. Apart from this, we introduce these changes in such a way that we could do a phase-wise rollout, as well as we will be able to triage the numbers that have been allocated using the new approach as well as the older approach. As a result, we ended up introducing a new state into the particular system so that the numbers which have been allocated using the new approach will continue to work and it can be tracked separately. And the telemetry also has been updated to provide sufficient visibility into what kind of allocation is being taking place, whether it is the new optimized approach or whether it is the old approach. And the new changes has been done without impacting the existing one. So even if you decide to turn it off and go back, or again you turn it on, we will still be able to perform the particular flow without affecting the existing allocation that is happening. So the whole backward compatibility has been taken care. So these were the design thoughts that we kept in mind: reduce the number of calls and be backward compatible. Yeah, next. Here we will talk about the particular in the continuous number sequence, how it worked in the old flow and the new flow. Get number is the API call that you do to get the particular number. In the old flow, we basically first try to look for a number is there in the number sequence list for a given number sequence, then take an up lock on the number sequence table if the number is not present, pick a particular record and insert it into the number sequence list and return back. Then make an additional call to say that this particular number allocated to so-and-so session ID, transaction ID, etc. And the status would be changed from available to active. As a result, you could see that there was the concurrent request needs to be serialized, which led to blocking of, which is to increase the number of blocking sessions the way we were doing this part. So because we used to take a lock on number sequence table, the number sequence list table. So as a result, it used to cause blocking sessions to happen. So these were the two tables. One was number sequence table and number sequence list table. On the cleanup side, we did do a performance improvement on basically both with respect to recycling the numbers that gets lost because of operations that used to happen due to use and abort of the transaction, as well as due to the service. So the cleanup had only support for used and abort. The old one had the support for crash. To summarize it, we were making multiple SQL calls to get numbers, and this used to fail as we failed to scale due to the concurrent request as well as due to the blocking session. These shortcomings were improved in the new approach. What we do in the new approach is we still talk to these two tables, the number sequence table and number sequence list table. What we do is we try to fetch a number from the number sequence list table if it is available. If it is available, it picks a record, changes the state and returns it back. And let's assume if it isn't existing in a number sequence list, there is no available record in number sequence list. It goes and pre-populates the number sequence list table with a set of records based on the value that you have configured in the prefetch size. Now, what is the value add of this? This value add is this reduces the contention that we have on the number sequence table over a period of time. So as a result based on the prefetch size, we populate a set of records and number sequence list based upon the prefetch size, and we pick one of the records and return it back. On the cleanup side, we improved it basically to handle the crash scenarios or unexpected terminations, wherein basically a session has been lost or it hasn't been closed properly. Similarly, we update this number sequence list with the recycled numbers during the cleanup operation. That is, anything that we didn't get an explicit call or the transaction didn't get completed successfully, we didn't go on the transaction framework side. So how did this help us? This helped us on a multiple end. That is, we basically, because of this pre-allocation, the number of contentions on the number sequence list table gets reduced because we are using the read past lock and the row lock while updating a particular record, read past while picking the record. Similarly, we have used the pre-allocation value to pre-populate the particular number sequence list table with a set of records. So the number of times we take a lock on the number sequence table gets reduced proportionately to the prefetch size and the concurrency that the user have. We also have seen to it that based on the experience on the non-continuous number sequence, what we have done is we have we have set a default size for the prefetch value. If the user hasn't, let's say you enable this particular feature and you don't enable, you don't have to go to each and continuous number sequence and set the prefetch size. It will by default use 5 as the default value. As a result, it will continue to work, but we would recommend the users to go ahead and change that prefetch quantity based upon the usage of the number. So we will see less number of logs, and the system will give you a better user experience and better performance. So these were the things that was done on the number sequence list table and the number sequence table to get us a better experience and better numbers. So yeah, so this is how the old and the new architecture is different.
Awesome. Thank you, Prabhakar. So here what we are showing you is all the status available on number sequence list. And that's a page when you click on status, you see the records and there is a status. When you enable this new feature, you will see a new status called active non-blocking. This is basically introduced to keep the current flow, the old flow we are calling in this talk, and the new flow. So the current, if you don't use this new feature, you will just see active. But if you use this new feature, you will see active non-blocking. So that's the difference here. Just wanted to call out so that you will see this new status in the UI. So on the UI changes, primarily on the number sequence page, these has been changed. So automatic cleanup, the verbiage here has been improved. Now it takes care of unexpected terminations and crashes and all those cases. So this cleanup job also turns on when you do continuous yes. And by default, it does also set for 24 hours. This interval is in hours, and this will be created as a system job. You will not find this job as a batch job in the backend, but yes, this is behind the scene at the kernel level. What you can do is, in case you have a requirement where you need to clean up these numbers which were got crashed or anything happened and you want them to be cleaned up and reused frequently. Let's say you want to make sure like end of month or end of week or end of day, those kind of scenarios for numbers to be cleaned. You can do or reduce this interval from 24 hours to let's say 12 hours or maybe 8 hours, 6 hours, those kind of numbers you can set, and obviously make sure you test it out and then go for that interval. Another significant improvement which we mentioned already, performance one, right? So now with this feature, even with continuous is on, you can use pre-allocation. So that will not be deactivated like today. It will still stay on. And we also put the default value as 5 in the quantity of number column. The reason to do that, we saw in the non-continuous number sequence, customers are having the load and turning on the pre-allocation and setting that value was not happening. So we thought, okay, let's just go with the default continuous, and pre-allocation is also default. We set the value to 5, but obviously depending on your business scenario, business requirement, the volume, the load, infrastructure, all things play a role. And based on that, you can set this quantity here. So you can set it to 10, you can set to 50, 100, 500,000, depending on the business process you have and the load you have. So make sure you test that number in the sandbox environment, how things look in that, and then go for that setting in production. In case you turn it on, you see this new behavior, the default value 5, it's taking the 5 numbers in the database in the number sequence list, and you still don't want that, you can change it to 1. And that will give you exactly same like old behavior even with this new feature. But yeah, we typically recommend to even set 5 or even higher number for pre-allocation. Let's have a quick demo here and find out how do you see it different from the UI perspective. As I'm just showing you here in the org administration, there is a number sequence page where you can see all the number sequences, and another option is on the AR parameters, or any module have the parameter page where we can also set the number sequences through the number sequence tab. So let's take the example of sales order over here. In the sales order number sequence, we will change that number sequence. It is a company-based number sequence right now, and it's all alphanumeric, and it's getting used for sales order. You can see that in reference. And this is that field which controls continuous number sequence flag. Right now it is no, so it is non-continuous number sequence, and it has pre-allocation. Yeah, right now the feature is not enabled in this demo part, so we will see the old behavior or the current behavior. So as soon as we enable it, we see a message, and you see, as soon as we turn on the continuous flag, the pre-allocation became no, right, which cannot be used today. And the cleanup tab automatically pops up as soon as you turn on the continuous flag. And you can see all the tracking of all the field, all the new numbers into the status list. So this status list is empty right now. There's no number generated over here. So let's do one thing. Let's create a sales order and see how the new existing flow takes the continuous number from that. As soon as I create a new sales order, it generates a new number for me, 872. And if I go back to the number sequence page, find that same number sequence again, we will see this new number is saying free. The status is free. Yeah, we cancel that. So anytime a new number is required, it will use this number first. Okay. So now I have enabled the feature in this environment. Now let's go back and find that number sequence record once again. So going to the same number sequence, and yep, so it's continuous as no. I mark this as yes now. The cleanup tab pop up, and also you will notice, as we said earlier, pre-allocation will be used and default value will be 5. You can obviously change it to any number based on your business, but for the demo, I'm changing it to 10, saving the record. And right now the status list is empty, so it didn't generate any number. So now what will happen if I use this process? Let's create a new sales order. So I click on new sales order. It went through, it generated number 873 here. So I'm not gonna hit cancel yet. And let's find out what is on the status list now. So in the status list now, you will see 10 numbers generated from 873 to 882. And the last one, active non-blocking. Currently I am on that sales order page. I haven't completed it. So that's why it's active and non-blocking. And the rest all are free. So if another interaction session or anyone needs the number, it will use the next number. But if I hit cancel, it will free that 873 as well. So this concludes the demo. All right. So let's also talk about the performance side. So performance side, the GL posting. So we did also some benchmarking here for performance. So we took 2 areas. We'll go through one by one. The first one we did on GL posting, and in that one we saw with feature and without feature some comparisons here. And we did the comparison on the voucher generation, voucher number, and we did that with 200 lines, 200K lines, 500,000 lines, and 1,000,000 lines too. The challenge we saw with continuous number sequence, as the volume grew to 500,000 and million plus lines, the AOS was crashing continuously every time. So it was not even working with continuous number sequence in that scenario. And as soon as we enabled this feature, we saw 300 to 400% jump in the performance. It's a significant improvement. suddenly as if the volume is even higher for the performance gains. Another one we did with free text invoice posting. So when we don't use this feature, the first tile here. So without feature, we saw the throughput in compared to non-continuous pretty much half. But with the new feature, we were able to get the performance very similar to non-continuous number sequence for the exact same volume, exact same process. So it was somewhere around 90-95% close to what you will expect in the non-continuous number sequence. So all the contention from the back end has been removed, and with that we could see a significant performance gain here. Okay. So we saw the feature, we had a demo, we also understood how it works high level. Now we are coming towards the end of our tech talk, and we will also learn some key takeaways and this is also an important one when this feature is rolling out. We had this feature since 10.29, but it was in private preview, so we had it flight based. We did have used for many customers at our end. We do have customers who are testing it in sandbox and having great results. We in fact have many customers using it in production and having successful performance gains and all those things improvements. So it's a very stable feature in terms of that. We do plan to preview it in 10.34, and with 10.34 you don't need the flight. You can see it through feature management, and you will see with the name of continuous number sequence performance improvements. The state will be off by default, but with the 10.36, which is a October major release, we do plan to go GA, general available of this feature, and also we will plan to turn it on by default with the same name. And of course, if you think you don't want this feature to be used, you can turn it off, but by default, the value will be on. It will not be mandatory in the 36 release. Okay, so I'm on my second last slide. Some final recap or key takeaways here for everyone. We do have business, right, where we do need numbers, auto-generated numbers. They should not have any gaps, and primarily due to legal compliance, those reasons. If you have those reasons, yes, you should use continuous number sequence. FNO, also keep in mind, it does provide continuous number sequence, but in the no gap manner. It's not like the numbers will be in sequence, and the numbers will not have any gap. To avoid the gap or to avoid the big gap, I would say the continuousness, you reduce the interval of cleanup routine we saw, which is 24 hours by default. And that way you can try to have more continuous numbers even in the continuous number sequence. The performance of continuous number sequence can also be improved now using pre-allocation. So the default value is 5. It's by default on with this feature, but we encourage you to make sure you test it, try with different numbers, how the performance looks like, what is acceptable to business, how many numbers you can keep in database, in CNS status list, number sequences status list, and then use that pre-allocation. Now with pre-allocation in continuous number sequence, those are not in memory, those are in database. So system does keep track of generated, used, unused, reserved, all those numbers in the database number sequence list table. So it's not in memory. You do have visibility. So what are the numbers generated? What are used? Those things are there. Cleanup job is improved significantly now. As on the SaaS-based application, we do see there are frequent updates happening, restarts, or if unexpected termination or unexpected AOS crashes are happening in those scenarios also. We have improved this cleanup job to take care of track of those unused numbers. And last takeaway to more of a confidence is we do have, as we build this feature more than a year ago, and have many customers using this feature in production in Sandbox successfully already. So yep, thank you so much for your time. We are on the end, and I will ask Prabhakar, if you have any questions which we can take live.
Yeah, the one of the questions that you just covered, right, was related to how safe is it to enable this particular feature. There was a question related to it, and what are the issues did one face when the customers enabled it. So initially we did have few teething troubles. We have all fixed that, and they have been working fine for past good number of months. I would say, for past couple of quarters. Currently, we haven't faced any issue in past, say, 4 to 5 months by any of the customers who are using this. The performance numbers have been good. And whenever a customer complains of session blocking or slowness issue related to continuous number sequence, we have been enabling this particular feature on the need basis for such customers based on the incident. So to summarize, it is safe. It has been validated by good number of customers. I think there was one more question related to the timeline, which you have already covered. It is in private preview already, and it has been enabled to feature flighting. The third set of questions was, what is the particular, so P53, it has been flighted in private preview. 58 onwards, it is there in public preview, where it is off by default, and coming PU60, it'll be on by default, and it'll be GA. And these are tentative dates for the future ones. Yes.
One thing sorry, Prabhakar. Only one thing I want to mention. Most of you should be on 10 or 29 or plus right now. So if you want to try this feature, you can reach out to support and enable this flight, give this flight name, and you can use this feature if you are not on 10 or 34 version right now.
The other question was, we had a couple of questions related to what is the optimum value for the prefetch quantity. That we would say is tough to give one particular number which fits all size, but the default is fine, which you can keep incrementing it based on your scenario. The typical factor that we look out as for a given number sequence, 50th percentile call on the per minute basis. What is the particular number? We try to gravitate towards that number and we try to use it. But again, it varies from environment. It depends upon each particular flow. So as Saurabh already informed that, try out the particular number in your sandbox environment, and the same thing, one can put it into the prod. So we don't have a generic number, but that's the number that we use with. We use a 50th percentile value for the number of requests that we get per minute, and we try to play around that number and see how the performance slowly incrementally change those numbers. Having too high a value, also we have tested it. But I would recommend you to test it with based on your environment and SQL tier and environment setup, etc. So that's those were the main category of questions. So
yep. No, I do see a lot of questions on the same. I think we already covered. How do we set the pre-allocation quantity, right? It's a trial, guys, right? So you try with one, you look at the load, right? If the load is too high, think of how many numbers you will need and what you would like to block it out in one session, in one calls, right? For database to fetch and keep them in the database number sequence list table and keep using from there. So it all depends on that requirement, and you can play around, increase it, decrease it based on that. We do have customers even use it up to 1000 that number sequence in the pre-allocation. So it's up to you how you want it. So we cannot give you one number, this is how you can do it. It all depends on the load, number of records you need to do for that particular process, let's say in batch, and based on that you have to define, okay, this performance looks good, or I'm looking for more. Then you may need, and you see contention on the back end for number sequence tables, then of course you should increase that pre-allocation.
We do have an API also that can be invoked on the number sequence class as a number sequence. We have a method which can be invoked to pre-populate the numbers if you want a higher value. So we do have both options. If you want to initialize to a huge value of 10,000, 50,000 records, you want to pre-populate it and then call the number sequence or the whatever your posting activity, that is also available. So both options are there.
Just now one question came, Prabhakar, I'm reading it out. Will this have an impact on the way number sequence classes to write logic to generate and consume number sequences?
No, there is no change. So the integration endpoints API remain the same. There is no change to that. So
and no impact also, right? It should
no impact on it. So there is no need for any code change or configuration change by enabling this particular feature.
Yep, I see one more. Can we enable the feature without a platform update? We are currently on 10 or 33. You can update, you can enable the feature if you are on 10 or 33. So, but what you have to do is you will have to reach out to support team give this flight name, enable non-blocking number sequence, and we can maybe put it in the announcement so that you can note it, and based on that, you can tell support team to enable it in your environment. Of course, test it out in Sandbox first, get that enabled in Sandbox, and if it all looks good, you can get that enabled in production. This is definitely one of the feature more stable. We do have, as I mentioned earlier, customers using it successfully with much higher loads, much higher volumes in production environment. That was the primary reason to build this feature. We were seeing the customers pain with this new feature, and that was the reason to go through this new feature and build. Cool. Thank you so much for your time. I think we can close it here.
Thanks to our presenters and to you, our audience, for attending our Tech Talk today. We hope you have a great rest of the day.